And welcome everybody. Tonight's presentation probably has special meaning for me and personally, as I'm coming to you from isolation from COVID. So one of the things that I really appreciate is our ambassadors and coordinators that are out there that are really out there providing a lot of information and a lot of compassion for people that do experience COVID. It's a really tough disease to deal with, and many people experience it in different ways. So you'll hear today our experience from our Value Baltimore team. Value Baltimore stands for Vaccine Acceptance and Access, lives in unity, education, and engagement. And the team supports, or the project supports, COVID-19 vaccination, reaching an 80% level of Baltimore City residents. And we've done this through a group of very well-trained and well-selected peer ambassadors. And these ambassadors are a real trusted source of information for community members, particularly in the underserved communities. They speak about the importance of vaccination and how you can protect your families against COVID-19 and other health threats. The other key element of our program is that the ambassadors really work to help build trust. So one of the ways they do this is through listening and providing information through a variety of different activities, and you'll hear some of these activities tonight. So not just about COVID-19, but also addressing some of the issues relating to social determinants of health. As you can see below, we have 4 different focus areas: family, youth, older adults, and disabilities and underlying conditions ambassadors. And tonight we have with us our family and youth. This project is sponsored by the Baltimore City Health Department and the International Vaccine Access Center, along with our partners at Morgan State University. And now it is my pleasure to turn it over to Dr. Teresa Leslie, who leads a lot of the day-to-day efforts with our youth ambassadors and will be our moderator for tonight. So thank you.
Good evening, everyone. In this webinar today, we're going to talk about coping. And as we all know, as a result of the pandemic and as a result of COVID, there are a lot of people, there's been an increase in a lot of mental health concerns, such as depression, anxiety, insomnia. And this, instead of focusing on the mental health, strictly on mental health, we thought we would talk about coping, how to cope, how our youth and some of our family ambassadors have coped, and how they have helped others cope during this time. That's been very difficult. And this fits in within the part of the Value Baltimore project that's called Healing Baltimore, which is designed to lead to a healthier Baltimore after COVID. And there are 4 elements to Healing Baltimore. That's weekly self-care tips. Mainly, we always tell people, take care of yourself. So we provide inspirational messages and tips for healthy behaviors. And weekly, also little known positive facts about Baltimore. A lot of times, emphasis is always placed on the challenges in Baltimore, but actually there are some wonderful things going on, not only in current Baltimore, but historically Baltimore. And that's something to be proud of. And it's also, Healing Baltimore is also had webinars that honestly discussed historical trauma in Baltimore, because if acknowledging that trauma is kind of the first step to healing. And the 4th component of Healing Baltimore was social determinants of health referrals to the Baltimore City Health Department for services. So on that, this webinar is kind of based in this healing post-COVID. So with that, I would like to go right into it and introduce our first speaker, who is Andrea Kennedy. And Andrea Kennedy is a coordinator in the family value team. Which was originally the pregnant and lactating women's team. She is also the director of the Arts Project. So welcome, Andrea. And there are two questions I'd like you to really talk about in your presentation today. How do you use art to assist people when coping during challenging times, such as this time during COVID-19?
Hello, everybody. It's a pleasure to be with you all. My name is Andrea, and I am the founder of the Arts Project. Our overarching goal is to grant access and exposure to the arts. And we've been granted opportunities this year to work closely with the Healing Baltimore Project to create safe spaces and opportunities for youth to identify their creative niche. A lot of times the youth that we encounter, they don't really know what they look like as a creative. And so we have been given opportunities to help them dive into who they are and unpack how they feel about the arts and how it can help them process things that they're feeling in that moment. On the screen currently is the image that we used for an art exhibit that we hosted this year, funded by the health department in Morgan, entitled The COVID-19 Experience Through the Lens of Healing, Hope, and Resilience. That was one of the biggest ways we've been able to support youth in Baltimore and adults as well, with being able to give them the platform to communicate how COVID really impacted their healing process and impacted their families and everything. And so during this project, we were able to commission 8 artists, 4 youth, 4 adults, and each of them took whatever element, healing, hope, and resilience, how it applied to them personally, and created images. I know that we have a few pictures of the artists and their pieces. We can show them. And we had them on display throughout, I want to say March, and we had some events in May. We served, it's reached about 200 people, and we've had great feedback. It was an opportunity for us to not only give a platform for the youth and the adult artists to communicate their emotions, but also engage the public in dialogue about how the pieces made them feel about their personal COVID experiences. With the initial exhibit was held at Union Baptist Church, and we got a great response, and I'm excited about the impact that it's caused and how it's helped people feel vulnerable enough to share their personal experiences. Outside of this, we've also, working under the pregnancy and lactating team, we've had the opportunity to engage mothers and their children in a family paint session. So it was a mental health symposium. We had these same images, these paintings available, posted up around the room. We had a counselor and a therapist present, and we were able to engage in a paint and sip while also talking through the emotion that came with being a mom and having to care for your child while also processing your own grief and your own emotions and your own baggage that came from the losses of the pandemic. And so for me, I know personally the arts has really truly become my voice. I live in color, I thrive in color. And I know that without art being my my means of communication, I will have a much difficult experience with communicating how I feel at times, especially during COVID. I had experienced health issues and personal loss and things. And so in those moments where I just really didn't have anything to say, I used music and the arts, visual and performance, to process how I was feeling. And so I did come up with a few ways to encourage everyone listening how you can use art as a coping mechanism during challenging times. The first thing is, the beautiful thing about art is that it's not a cookie cutter thing, right? Like, you can make art how you want it to be. You can make it work how you want it to work for you. And I just want to encourage everyone to just give yourself the opportunity to sit in that creative space and allow that space to be free of judgment. Give yourself grace and allow yourself to just process everything that comes up for you. The other thing that you can do is just allow art to be your escape from reality. The news can be so depressing, and just the state of the world can be very It can bring you down. And so art can be your escape from that loud noise, that cognitive noise that you have to deal with at work, at school. Just allow it to be your escape from reality. And you'll be surprised with what you can create. Thirdly, you can allow it to be your voice. As I mentioned, sometimes it's hard to put words behind the feelings that you're trying to process and unpack. And I know sometimes for me, it's easier just to process through color. It can be painting, coloring, pottery, use whatever medium, even with sound, singing. I know for me, I love karaoke. So karaoke helps me process a lot of emotion. I'll get a mic and start singing like I'm Whitney Houston and sing my heart out, sounding a hot mess, but I make it work, right? Like that makes me process how I feel. And even body movement, sound, dancing, right? That's an art form. The arts is so broad, like you can explore various avenues. And then lastly, you can use the arts to memorialize the loss that we've experienced through these past 2 years, right? We've had not only just the losses of life, but we've lost jobs, we've lost relationships because of the isolation. We've had a lot of loss. And so you can use music, you can use dance, you can use visual arts as an opportunity to memorialize this experience. And yeah, I just encourage you guys just to explore and not to bottle yourself in and think that there aren't other ways to communicate or process dealing with hard times, especially with this new normal. And these are the images and the paintings from the exhibit. I wasn't able to get all of the pictures, all the artists holding their art, so with their art. So these are the artists that were a part of the exhibit at Union. It was a very rewarding experience. We worked in collaboration also with Creative Nomads. They assisted in helping identify the artists and contribute as well.
Thank you, Andrea. I think that over and over again, I always hear and I believe that the arts are a very good way to express yourself, to relieve stress, and to cope in general. And like you said, it's not just painting, it's theater, it's singing, it's so many things. And something that is often overlooked in the significance of the arts in our society today. So thank you so much for that wonderful presentation.
Thank you.
I would like to now introduce Shoshana Oppenheim. And Shoshana is the coordinator. I hope I spelled your first name wrong. Okay, I got it. She is the coordinator for the youth group. So she's gonna talk a little bit about how it has been leading the youth ambassador team, and also how, from your perspective, Shoshana, you think that this program has benefited youth during this time of COVID-19.
Yeah, so I wanted to start by saying I love leading the youth team. Each time that our team comes together for meetings or going to events, I just have this new sense of energy and vision for what our young leaders are capable of, not just in the future, but right now, using their power as teens and using the unique skills that youth have. Our youth team is incredibly involved in their communities, whether it's their school or neighborhood or their own social networks. And they're clearly leaders in these spaces, which is what makes them such incredible ambassadors, because they really are those like trusted peers that you want to talk to at school and who you're going to listen to if they're saying something about COVID-19 or health or vaccinations. They're also brilliant with technology and social media and have brought a lot of expertise and ideas, not only just to our youth team, but like to the broader value community in different ways. And I just think our whole value community has really benefited from some of that brilliance. And additionally, they're asking thoughtful and kind of hard questions that the adults aren't necessarily always thinking to ask. Oh gosh, I'm sorry, there's such loud thunder over here. I don't know if you all got it too. Anyways, so sorry if I cut out. as a team, we have our challenges too. Teens are especially, reliant on either rides or public transportation because a lot of them can't drive themselves. And, that illuminates a lot of issues with our Baltimore transit system, but also just ways for teens to be able to access different parts of the Baltimore community. Additionally, like, our youth team has a lot of different family obligations. They have long school days, they have homework, and they're leaders in their communities. So they've got other after school responsibilities too. And so that is an added challenge, but at the same time, it's an added opportunity as well, because it's just so many more touch points with their social groups and peers. Another challenge is that being, since we're kind of like this subset of a greater team of adults working in a field that doesn't usually partner with teens or youth, we sometimes overlook the unique needs and perspectives of our ambassadors, our youth ambassadors. And that's no one's fault. It's just been a learning and growing process to make sure that our team's needs receive the attention that they deserve, and that concerns are being met, and that we're moving forward and being as vocal and present in our community as possible. So that's been a cool challenge to work through, and I think it actually leads into my next point, which is how our team is benefiting, because I really think that this project and their participation in Value Baltimore helps them to become empowered leaders in their communities, in our community. Youth, I think, historically are recipients of health interventions and health services, but they're not usually asked to partner and lead these different health interventions. And so giving youth this opportunity to be a partner in the cure, a partner in the solution, and lead the solution is so important to our youth in Baltimore. But I think it also, on a grander scheme, is going to be able to create some important change in the future as we think about the implications of this pandemic on community health as a whole.
Thank you, Shoshana, for that introduction to the youth group. And now we would actually like to bring on the youth. We'll start with two, Daniel Perrin and Ayara Manning. And I just want to mention that Ayara, the youth really kind of grabbed onto this opportunity, and Ayara is actually responsible for the development and design of the flyer that went out. So yay, Ayara. I think we're going to start with Daniel, who couldn't be with us tonight, but has provided a recording. Oh, I should ask one of the questions. Sorry, I didn't ask the questions. That's my fault. How has COVID impacted your family? I think that is, and how do you kind of define your family? So that's the question. And there's Daniel.
So when thinking about how COVID-19 has impacted my family, the first thing that really comes to my mind is that my mom is in the medical field, and so she's been on the front lines of the pandemic on the pediatric side in North Carolina and in Baltimore. And I think I've seen how COVID-19 has totally destroyed the hospitals and clinics of America and around the world with that angle, and just seeing the kind of huge amounts of death and sickness that came with that was really harmful to myself, but also to everyone around our places, our cities, and our country and our world. But I also think that I'm someone who's had really close relationships with my grandparents my entire life, and so COVID-19, with them being at a higher risk for death and for hospitalization for COVID-19, has really put a dent in how all of us as a family can connect with each other. And we've had to adapt to more virtual, of course, as everyone has, but it's been tough in that way. And then, of course, I think COVID-19 has caused a much smaller sense of community at workplaces, schools, universities, just out in the open area, downtowns, things like that. And I've always valued that, and my family's always valued that. So, I think that's really been felt. I'll talk a little bit more later about the ways that there's another side to it. There's been some positives to the pandemic, but that's how I think that COVID-19 has impacted my family.
Are you ready for me to go? Or
I think there's one more video, right?
okay.
I'll try to be quick here because I do think that there's a lot that the pandemic has taught us, and obviously it's been devastating for life and for financial situations and for a lot of other things to our world, but it definitely has taught humanity, I think, to be more resilient and to learn how to adapt to changing situations, and we're going to have more changing situations as time goes on. That's at least what science is telling us. But I think that we've learned to appreciate the outdoors more. I think we've learned to be a little bit more cohesive as a humanity and to learn how to contribute and do our own parts more. Everyone has a different role in fighting the pandemic, and I think that most people have agreed to that role and worked for that role. And I think that we have learned how to kind of hit those curveballs that might come our way at a higher rate than we did before. Obviously, there's been a lot of problems in terms of switching to virtual life, and I'm scared about what that poses for the future. But I think that for the most part, we've learned how to be more resilient to changing situations, and that's a good thing because we're going to face more of them. I cannot stress enough how important it is that we've appreciated the outdoors more, and I hope that we continue to do that even after COVID maybe has gone down in its intensity after a while.
Okay, Ayara. Now you are very talented. Ayara is up.
Thank you. So I define my family as nuclear-ish. It's me, my mother, my stepfather, and my two younger siblings, 5 and 3 respectively. We all live in a house together. And when the pandemic started, my siblings were a lot younger, of course. So, and like, because of that, like we couldn't get away from each other because everyone was working or doing school from home. So it's like we were all on top of each other, like socialization wise, I mean, like all on top of each other all the time. It's like I couldn't go anywhere in the house without seeing them. And then of course, having 2 younger siblings, it's like trying to do Zoom meetings and stuff like that while trying to like help out with them. It was just really stressful. And then we all got really bad cabin fever because my mom and my stepdad, they like to travel. So we go on a lot of trips and stuff, but because of COVID, all that was shut down. And doubly so because the lockdown started on my birthday. So it's like all the plans I had out the window, gone. That was it.
I'm on mute. Thank you, Ayara. And if Daniel was here, I would thank him also. So now I would like to introduce Tristan Stefanovic. I mess up your name all the time. I'm sorry. Stefanovic and Asi Sai, who are also members of our youth ambassador team. Good afternoon, and thank you for good evening, and thank you for joining us. And the question that I pose to you is, what impacted your ability to cope during the pandemic? And what are ways that your family as a whole coped during this time? So let's start with Asi and then go on to Tristan.
Okay, so hi, my name is Asi Sai, and well, in the beginning of the pandemic, I think, like a sophomore in high school, and that transition, I was really excited because we were getting out of school and things like that. But as we went on, it got serious, and it was like, oh crap, this is really happening. As like things continue to happen, like during the pandemic, I got to learn like a lot about myself, and I had a lot of time, alone with myself, with my family and my siblings. So it left me with a lot of things like thoughts and things like that. And I didn't really have anything to do. So something that really helped me was learning like different passions that I had and diving into that. I started getting more into like community like community service kind of work and like working on Zoom, just learning more about like the community, Baltimore, and just the challenges some people in the community and every community youth groups they face. And that's something that really helped me because I got to learn so much, but also find something that I could potentially see myself doing as I am now leaving for college soon. So that was one thing that really helped me, and just finding creative ways to enjoy life in a way, because I realized that I consumed like a lot of technology. I spent most of my time on my phone and computer, and like I just wasn't doing much. And that really helped me doing something, feeling like I'm moving towards my future, thinking about my future. That really helped me. And for my family as well, I have a little sibling and I have an older sister, and we were all in the house together, and sometimes we would clash because it can be something, but it just it made me appreciate family in a way, and it made me really like be grateful for a lot of things that I do have, because most of my family doesn't live here in Baltimore or in America. So just reconnecting with family members and making sure everybody's okay, like coming together as a whole, and just seeing like the beauty in like little things. So yeah, like it really brought like this big appreciation that I had. And yeah.
I'm on mute. We still haven't learned to unmute ourselves in Zoom calls after all this time. Thank you, Asi. I really appreciate that. Tristan, what about you?
So I'll preface this with a disclaimer that we are having a very large thunderstorm right now.
Right, speak up a little, Tristan, or get closer.
Sure, let me turn on my microphone here a little bit. I will preface this by saying we have a very loud thunderstorm right now, so I apologize for any background interference. So during the pandemic, after the initial kind of novelty wore off, and during this virtual year of schooling that we had very limited access to, proper in-person social outlets, like in-person school. So, I normally deal with stress by talking to, friends and classmates. And a lot of the time we share a lot of the same stress because it might be about assignments or something at school. And, virtual schooling, you don't really have the time to socialize. You go into your Zoom classroom and you do your work, and then you leave your Zoom classroom, and you can't really, pull somebody aside and tell a joke, that kind of thing. So, you couldn't really do that in the early stage of the pandemic. Meeting in person was not really an option because of the health concerns. And so, once and I'll speak more about this later when we talk about family, but once my two brothers had left for college, I was more or less alone in the house for most of the day, coping with virtual school. So really not having those in-person outlets to speak with people and interact with people was really a detriment to coping during the pandemic.
Thank you, Tristan. Again, I didn't unmute. Right now, we're going to bring back all the panelists. And the question is, Daniel touched on it already in his previous video, but what has the pandemic taught us? And what have we learned? And I think that's very interesting from an arts perspective, as well as from a youth perspective. So let's start with you, Andrea. If you have anything to add to that, what has the pandemic taught us, and what have we learned?
I'm sorry, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Delayed. Okay, can you re-ask the question for me 1 second?
What have we learned from the pandemic? What are the learnings from the pandemic?
I feel like we've learned that we thrive with on relationship and camaraderie and fellowship, for lack of a better term. Isolation can be detrimental to our well-being. And I feel like, I know with me and my kids, doing virtual sessions. We started an online art sessions that were free. We were streamed to Facebook, and then we moved into having them on Zoom. And it just didn't impact them the way that we anticipated. And they would ask, when are we coming back together? When are we going to have sessions in person? And a lot of them were like texting me individually. Can I come over your house? Can we paint this week? Can we? The isolation, I feel it can be okay, but not for long spans of time. So I feel like we've learned the importance of connection amongst our peers.
Yes, yes. Thank you
Yeah.
for that. What about you? I see your camera on, so I'm going to call on you, Tristan, and then I'm going to call on Ayara and then Asi, and I don't know if you would like to add anything, Shoshana. So go ahead, Tristan.
Yeah, I think we definitely did learn a lot about our nature as human beings, because, you know, we were kind of thrust into all these different situations and had to be a lot more flexible. I'm sure we've heard that word a lot in the past year, is flexibility than we're used to. And so we kind of learned what our limit is as to what we can tolerate, how far we can be pushed or flexed. And it's really interesting because it's something that applies to all facets of your life, whether it be with your family at home or at work or at school or whatever it may be. So I think that was one of the major things that we learned about ourselves. The other major component, I would say, would be about the social side of us and seeing, you know, where we stand with how much we can tolerate not having to interact with people, and how much of an introvert or an extrovert we are in general.
Thank you, Tristan. Yeah, I'm hearing themes here: relationships, community, and the importance of it. You're up, Ayara.
I think the most important thing that I think that we've learned from COVID is like how important our service workers are. Like people, not even just like beyond nurses, doctors, people in just the health field, like the normal everyday people that like keep the world running, like the whole essential workers thing. It's like how important those people are to like keeping our like society running, because it's like if these essential workers like didn't put themselves on the line, like the front lines, for better and for worse, because they really shouldn't have had to, but that's neither here nor there. Like if they wouldn't have put themselves on the line like that, then everything would have everything was shut down, but everything would have shut down. Like we wouldn't be able to function. So it's like a lot of people don't consider, don't really think about stuff like that, but it really made me keep in mind like those are also human beings, and like they're the backbone of our society, you know? It's yeah.
Thank you, Ayara. Hey, Asi, what about you?
I definitely want to second Ira. Like, I definitely agree with that. And also, I feel like the pandemic also allowed us to multitask, but also be able to innovate, you know, like create new ways to just do things like in the new world that we're living in. And yeah, I feel that's one of the biggest things, like the innovation, and everyone's ability to come together as like humans, and just, you know, being able to empathize with one another, help each other, you know, be like of a listening ear. So yeah, like innovation, and like Ayara said, frontline workers, and, you know, those people that literally made it possible for some of us to have, like, I guess, a smooth sailing in a way.
That we didn't really think about before, I think. Very good points. Shoshana, would you like to add anything before we open it up to questions?
I think Andrea and the youth said everything very eloquently, but I guess what I would add is, you know, I think this has shown just how adaptable and resilient individuals and communities can be. And that while change is really hard, like we are also capable of finding new normals. But at the same time, we know that this pandemic also showed us massive gaps in our support systems. And I think, you know, we learned, or rather like we can no longer ignore a lot of or push to the side things like mental health and our public health systems, and honestly so many more support and social services that we didn't realize how much was falling through the cracks. So I think there's like a lot of hope and opportunity that comes from this if we seize on it.
Mhm. Well, thank you to the panelists for participating. I don't know, right now I will open it up to questions. I think I do see a hand raised. I don't know. Andrew, I think I'm going to let you handle that.
Yes, I see two hands raised. We can allow Jean to talk.
And then Mike.
Yeah.
Can she unmute herself?
Yes.
Okay. Jean, you can unmute yourself and go ahead.
Maybe no longer has a question. I'm not sure.
Well, let's see about Mike.
I think he put his hand down. Rhonda has.
Rhonda, go ahead.
Hi, everyone. I'm trying to lower my hand.
Oh, okay.
I don't have a question. I just have a comment.
Go ahead.
And I have worked with all of those young people that are on the panel, and I just want to applaud them. I think they are so awesome, so articulate, so in tune to what we've been exposed to. And I'm so proud of them. And I know that they have taken everything that they've learned back to their own communities, their peers, and their families. And I appreciate them sharing from their hearts. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, Rhonda.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. There seems to be a technical that people are not able to unmute. I don't know.
Yeah, I have to allow him to talk. So I think Crystal has something.
Well, there's Jean and Mike also because
yeah,
unmute themselves. But Crystal, go ahead because you've managed to unmute.
Yes, I did. There was a cue that came up for me to unmute myself somehow. Yeah, so I want to first echo Rhonda's comments. I've had the pleasure of working with pretty much all of the young people as well, and they are quite awesome. Shoshana, you have done a great job. They are just phenomenal. My question is, I heard several of the young people allude to the fact that they have younger siblings, and I'm just curious as to, I know some of them were born into this new normal, but for those who are not and may have, kind of been wondering, well, what's going on? Why do I have to wear a mask or any of those types of questions? Were you able or had the opportunity to respond to any of their questions or to show any type of guidance in this new level of socialization to your younger siblings? What did that look like? Or did your parents, have a conversation? What did that look like?
Who would like to take on that question? I see we've lost Tristan and Ayara.
Yeah, I think a lot of people got kicked out from part of the storm. Ayara is trying to rejoin, but if Ossie's there, maybe Ossie could take this as an older sibling.
I didn't hear the question properly. It was kind of like breaking up. Can you like stay
I think Crystal was asking, what if I'm wrong, please let me know, Crystal. But how has it been for your younger siblings coping with the pandemic?
So my brother, he just turned 10, and like you could just see, like I just felt honestly like, I don't know, bad for him in a way, because we don't have, if you would say, like cousins here. So it's not like he could go like around the corner to meet, someone in the family that's close by. So what I always tried to do, like to kind of like, I guess, make him happy or just have something to do. So he's not like always like on a computer or on a screen. Is maybe just sometimes going outside or just finding new things like he can do to have fun. So yeah, it's just I know like it wasn't easy for him at all because he's so young, and it was just like such a big change of like he also had to do virtual school, and yeah, it wasn't easy, but I think like you managed, and he's been learning so much. He's so smart, and it's just like what? Yeah, but
Thank you. I don't think we have anybody else on now who has younger brothers and sisters. Tristan, your brothers are older. So Jean, can you talk now? You should be able to unmute yourself. In the meantime, there's something in the I'm going to verbalize in the question and answer. So it's not a question, but wanting to acknowledge the awesome job you all did during this forum, everyone. You all did a great job. So congratulations to you. And Jean has typed in the chat, what benefits could you name from school or Zoom? School on Zoom. Did you learn how to study more independently, or did you feel the teachers were, says here, short-circuited? So for those who have experienced Zoom school, which is probably all of you, what's your response? What say you?
I'll try and take this one before the power goes out again. So I would say the one thing I learned to do was good preparation, because 90% of Zoom school did not happen during the class. It happened on, Google Classroom for us at least, where we would, type our essay or do the math homework or whatever it was. So preparing before coming to class, like, was absolutely necessary. Like there was no way to not do it. So that I think that's something that was kind of forced upon me, and it took me a moment to learn it, but it was once I had gotten it, I did a lot better. And now being able to bring that good preparation into actual school, where I'm having full in-person years, has definitely helped.
Thank you very much. I'm a teacher, and I'm also a research librarian at Hopkins. And I know so many of our international researchers were working remotely, not able to travel to Africa or Bangladesh. And so you're right. The preparation before a Zoom conference was absolutely essential to communicate with other people overseas. And that's going to be great for you as you go on to higher education in college. You'll feel really comfortable with the challenges of higher education. Thanks for that response. I also wanted to ask more about how the students were involved in encouraging people in their communities to take the vaccine. Dr. Sack and I were part of the Pfizer vaccine trial out of Bayview. And we discussed with the researchers how they could reach into those communities on mobile clinics. So I don't know what actually really happened to get 80% of people initially vaccinated against COVID.
If I could just say, Jean, and I'll let the ambassadors, these are the ambassadors and the coordinators on this call are the ones who are on the front lines, getting people to get vaccinated, really providing people information so that they could make a choice to get vaccinated. So efforts like this Value Baltimore, these Value ambassadors and coordinators were the people that were really out there providing information on the vaccine and kind of negating some of the misinformation that was out there. And they need to be applauded for the work that they did and are continuing to do every day. These people are motivated. I've never seen a more motivated group of people. And they're vocal, and that's good. They are representatives of their communities. They know what their communities want. And it's actually a very excellent program. So I don't know if any of the ambassadors would want to, talk about your experiences in getting out there and working with people to keep that.
Yeah, I would love to hear more about actual experiences, how many times they had to go back. Did they accompany the people? Was there sort of a checklist of things they went through? So thank you. If the student ambassadors can respond, I think we can learn a lot about encouraging people to get preventative vaccines. Thank you.
I would say like through all of the like events or community places that I went, there was some people that were more, resilient and, they weren't really that open. But I'm a firm believer that, almost every and anything can be solved with a conversation. So it was just a matter of like, having a conversation and listening to maybe their doubts or their maybe fears or, past experiences with either like the health, the health care system or the government, or just like there's a lot of misinformation, but there's also a lot of like fear from past there's what's the word I'm looking for? There's a lot of mistrust, I guess. There's a lot of mistrust when it comes to like the government and these type of fields. So it's just like making sure we hear that, understand it, and like try to just provide people with, like Ms. Teresa said, the facts and, the information so that they can make the choice to get vaccinated, because ultimately it will help us as a whole all around the world. But yeah, there's just a lot of mistrust, and it's just like we have to work in rebuilding that trust so we can make greater impact.
Thank you.
And then there's another question in the chat, and it states, how did your knowledge of COVID-19 impact your family? I guess that, well, take it as you will. I take it to say, again, I can't apologize for the thunder because I have no control over it. But did that assist maybe your family in making decisions about getting vaccinated, whether it's your nuclear family or your extended family? Would anybody like to answer that question?
Good. Hold on, let me turn my camera on. Sorry, it's so dark, the rain. I guess my being a value ambassador, it helped keep my family a lot safer than they probably would have been without my knowledge, because it's I can tell them what areas are high, where cases are high at, where what the mandates are, what the health department is saying, before anybody else gets this information. So it's it helps them make their moves the way they need to. And then also it's just it's nice to have an in with the health department for stuff beyond vaccines, because they value gives us info about just general health, especially social determinants and stuff. And it's always nice to have that information.
Would anybody else like to add to that about how all the COVID knowledge that you've received has kind of helped in terms of your family dealing with COVID from a knowledge perspective? I guess not. There are no more questions in the Q&A, and I don't see any other hands up. So with that, I think it would be okay to close the webinar. And we really appreciate you coming. I would like to, Alois, you have a hand up very quickly. Go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to thank our ambassadors that are on the call today, because I think, the work that they're doing is in some ways so understated and should really be acknowledged to a great extent, because not only have they taught the community how to deliver information, but I think have very skillfully learned how to communicate. And that's a real skill that becomes important, to be able to judge how people are receiving the information, knowing when to push and not to push, knowing how to provide information that really goes, to that extra level to address the underlying issues that people had. This is a vaccination program, but we purposely identified some of the issues that people face that go well beyond vaccination. People's mental health and their stage in where they are really makes a difference in how open people are to receiving information or how healthy they'll be. So our ambassadors not only provide the vaccine information, but the ability to refer them and networks of people to be able to really achieve a more healthy Baltimore. So I want to just applaud all of the ambassadors that are out there on a day-to-day basis that are really talking to people. And I think one of the biggest learnings is that talking can go a long way and it can be very therapeutic, especially when it leads to greater knowledge and control over how people go. So thank you for all the ambassadors that were here tonight, and we really appreciate your questions from the audience.
Yes, so thank you everyone for coming, and thank you again to the ambassadors for the hard work you do. And this concludes our webinar. Thank you.